These videos were created with Blender using only Python code generated by GPT-4 and my prompts, and without the use of any special AI plugins. For some time, I've been interested in combining my machine learning and Blender skills. I've experimented with PyTorch 3D and various Blender plugins, but aside from generating textures, I haven't been hooked just yet. We all know that ChatGPT is great at generating code. And since Blender's Python commands are visible in the scripting tab, I wondered if GPT-4 could generate 3D scenes. I began with this prompt. Today I'd like to use Python to generate code for Blender. You'll need to include the necessary Blender BPY packages. I'd like to generate a scene that is a sphere with a mirror-like surface. Next I said, please generate a flat surface that will sit just below the sphere. On its surface, show a checkerboard pattern. So far, so good. And then I typed, next, I would like to deform the plane by selecting 6 random spots on the plane. For 3 of the random points, I would like the plane stretched positively on the y-axis. For the other 3 points, I'd like to stretch the plane negatively on the y-axis. Do not move in a positive or negative direction more than 1 meter. This would have worked as expected if I would have used the proper axis, which is z. But after a few back and forths, I recognized my error and asked for the correction, which I got. Now, after running the deform code that was generated, I still didn't see the result I was expecting. So I did a code review manually, and it was apparent that ChatGPT had missed a step. It didn't call the translate method on the transform object. I pointed this out and asked ChatGPT to fix the output. So far, it had been smooth sailing, and I was seeing the scene rendered as I had imagined it. I asked for a few more tweaks, such as starting placement for the sphere and scaling the plane. I knew from experience that I could use geometry nodes to create a sky sort of texture, so I asked for it. For this step, I went through a few iterations. I changed my prompts until I got something I could live with. Each time I generated the code, I would copy and paste the deltas into my Python source file in VS Code, and then Blender would prompt me because the files were out of sync, and I would reload the script. For my next prompt, I wrote, I'd like to make a 250 frame video. I'd like for the camera to be always pointing at the sphere. I'd like for the initial position of the camera to be above the sphere. As the frames progress, I'd like the camera to spiral around the sphere, moving closer and closer to the horizon of the checkered plane. By the last frame, I'd like for the camera to be looking up to see the sphere. This actually worked on the first try. I asked for a few tweaks, such as starting with the camera further away from the sphere and changing the elevation and direction of the sun in the generated background. I thought it might be kind of cool to add some shooting stars to the background. ChatGPT recommended that I use Blender's particle system and generated a plane to be used as an emitter. The initial suggestion didn't compile, and upon reporting the error, I was given another solution that also did not compile. As I gave the errors to ChatGPT as feedback, it seemed to oscillate between the 2 previous suggestions. It makes sense, really. Perhaps there are comparatively fewer examples of Blender source code to train on that produce a falling star effect compared to creating planes, spheres, and camera animations. At this point, I broke out of the ChatGPT box and reviewed the source code manually, compared it to the official documentation, found that some of the methods proposed had been deprecated or removed. So I took one of the solutions, made a few fixes. It's interesting to see what it did get right. It knew to place the surface generating the stars directly above the spheres and surface below. I didn't provide placement information other than the stars should be falling. The approach shown in this video should be considered no more than a Hello World equivalent. There's so much more that we can pull off with this, I'm sure. So dream on, fellow creators, and I'll see you next time.